Hi guys, please follow the creator on Wattpad, the creator of this story. This is Fallen Angel, Ayato Kirishima, ex-reader, Book 1, Chapter 2. Blood, more blood, screaming, pain, ghoul, blood, mum, dad, flesh, human flesh, ghoul, blood, pain, dead, both dead, blood, ghoul, Ayato. Wayan gasped as she jolted awake, forehead bedded with perspiration. She was breathing hard as if she'd run a mile. Her heart was beating fast against her ribcage. Her clothes were drenched in sweat. It was dark, the only light from the rays of the moonlight beaming through the gap of her white curtains. She didn't care where she was, or how she got in this warm bed. Her eyes were watering and her throat hurt from the screaming and crying. Her eyes widened suddenly as she was hit by a massive wave of flashbacks. Wayan's parents were taking her to a bookshop for her 10th birthday. She was going to pick as many books as her little 10-year-old heart desired. She spent the whole day there with them, and in the afternoon she went to a cafe, where she ate so much cake she felt like she could explode. She wanted to go home quickly so she could read as soon as possible, so they took the shortcut, and then they were both killed on her birthday. Tears were falling freely from her eyes as she broke off into sobs. She hugged her knees to her chest and hid her face behind her knees as she cried harder. "I love you, Mum and Dad. This is the best day ever." She was shaking as she sobbed harder. Her head hurt, but the pain she felt from losing her parents and watching them die right in front of her eyes and not having the power to do anything was even more painful than she had imagined. "Stop." A voice broke through her quiet sobs. Ryan sniffed and looked up, tears still falling from her wide, eye-coloured eyes. It was Ayato. He walked into the room and placed a cup of tea and a plate of delicious food on the table beside the bed. He didn't look at her once. She wiped her tears, a bit embarrassed at being told off by someone her age. "Well, what?" He walked away from the bed and towards the window. After looking out, he leaned his back on the wall, now facing her. "I said, stop." "Well, what do you mean, stop? I lost my mum and dad." "I mean, stop crying, you idiot. You've been unconscious for 2 days, and the first thing you do when you wake up is sob your eyes out for the next 2 weeks. How exactly is that healthy, you idiot?" He stared, looking straight at her. More tears fall from her eyes, and she wiped at it, avoiding his somewhat intense gaze. It was true, she'd spent the last 11 days in this room, which was a guest room in Anteku. Crying, she didn't eat much. She didn't sleep. All she did was cry. Whenever she closed her eyes, she'd see them all over again. She'd see them all over her parents, eating their flesh while they screamed in pain. "I don't know what to do. I just miss them. I miss them so much." She couldn't help but to break into sobs again. She kept wiping her eyes, but the tears weren't stopping. He scoffed. "Humans are pathetic and weak." She sobbed as she wiped her eyes with both hands. "At least eat something. You look like skin and bones," he sighed, running his hand through his already messy blue hair. Wayan rubbed her wet cheeks, feeling a tad bit offended, yet she knew it was the truth. Every day he'd come in here with food, and at night go back with the same food. She wouldn't even touch it. After what she'd witnessed, it had made her stomach sick to the bone to eat anything. Because of that, she was deathly pale and lost a lot of weight. By the first week it was okay with Ayato. He felt little sympathy for the human girl, but when it began to get unhealthy, he got annoyed. He wasn't used to this part of her. He was used to the cheerful, pure, and innocent girl who'd skip into the shop every morning by her mother's side. So yeah, he wasn't sure what to do with her in this state. A part of him just wanted to leave her alone. Who cares if she starved to death? She was a human after all, a lower species than him. Yet another part of him hated seeing her like this. He hated seeing her in pain, especially when he could do something to make a difference. She shook her head. Not hungry, she mumbled dryly. He walked over to her and sat by her bed. It dipped at this weight. He took the plate of food into his hands and turned to her, his face blank yet his pale blue eyes determined and angered. "I wasn't asking," he said in a monotonous voice. Wayne stared at him for a moment. The close proximity gave her a chance to really look at him. His intriguing purple blue eyes were blank, save for the brooding scowl of irritation that stretched out on his lips. His blue, messy hair swept over his purple eyes like majestically draped curtains. She remembered seeing him in his truest form when he saved her life. She was at awe by him. He looked nothing like the monsters who ate her parents. Sure, he had the same ghoulish eyes, but he was different, in a sense. He reminded her at that moment of a fallen angel, with his wings and his other angelic features. "Hey," he scowled, "do I have to force feed it to you, or are you going to eat it?" He was offering the chopstick of rice to her. Ryan blinked. Knocked out of her trance, she numbly opened her mouth and ate what he fed to her, knowing full well that he would, without second thought, force feed the food to her if she wouldn't cooperate. Soon she finished the bowl of food. He gave her slow sips of tea, but she couldn't finish that. No matter how good it tasted in her mouth, she was simply too full. He didn't say anything at all, just picked up the plate and left without a word. She stared at the door where he disappeared out of and sighed. She was a burden. Every day it would either be him or Toga or Mr. Manager that would bring her food or just come to talk, but she would ignore them and curl up in a under her sky blue blanket. Isn't Mr. Manager Mr. Yoshimura? Comment down below if that's correct, because I could be wrong. I haven't watched this in over a year. She fell back on her bed and stared at the white ceiling. Tears welled up in her eyes again, and a lump was forming at her throat. Every time she blinked, the same scene would show them covered in blood, staring wide-eyed at her. Their once woman-loving faces frozen in a moment of terror and pain. "Mom, Dad, why?" she whispered. She whispered with trembling lips as she curled up in a ball and turned, facing the blank wall. Tears were streaming down her cheeks, but she felt the same numbness overcome her senses. There is another chapter. I did like the first chapter more, but if Mr. Manager is Yoshimura, please comment down below because I could be